Okay, let's now talk about another measure of dispersion, which is the interquartile range. And that's technically the fourth statistic for a measure of dispersion. So we already know the range. The range is the difference between the maximum and the minimum value. We already know the variance. The variance is essentially the average squared deviation from the mean. But then when we take the square root of the variance, we get an estimate of the average deviation from the mean, because nobody really wants to know what the average squared deviation is. That's not really informative. And finally, we have the interquartile range. So the interquartile range is the difference between the 75th and the 25th percentile. So we use again measures of centrality, percentiles, and so we have here data 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 observations, and the values are already sorted in ascending order. So now we can calculate the median, and we use again the simple textbook version. So we use the simple textbook version. So the median, so first step for the median, we have to calculate the index number. So the index number is defined as the percentile p, so that is 0.5 times n, that's 8, so that's 4. So now 4 is an integer. So whenever we have an integer, we have to use as a proxy the midpoint between the fourth, if the index is 4. So we take the midpoint between the fourth and the fifth observation, which in this case would be 7.5. So now the 25th percentile. Again, we use the simple textbook solution, not the one that Excel will do. So now for the 25th percentile, we will do 0.25 times 8, and that is 2. So again, we have an integer, so we have to take the difference between the second, we have to take the midpoint between the second and the third observation. So that's the midpoint between 4 and 5. So that would be 4.5. Now the 75th percentile. So now we have to do 0.75 times 8, and that is 6. Again, another integer, so we have to take the midpoint between the 6th and the 7th, so between 8 and 10, so that is 9. So now the interquartile range is the value of the 75th percentile minus the value of the 25th percentile, which would be 4.5. Okay, so let's do the same thing again. I just call that simple textbook version, STV, and I just feel like maybe it makes sense to introduce the Excel version too. So in Excel, so what would be the median, if you remember? So now we use the Excel formula. So the index number determined by Excel follows the formula percentile times n minus 1 plus 1. So the index number for the median would be 0.5 times 7 plus 1, which is 3.5. Okay, so now we would take actually 4.5. So it's 3.5 plus 1, 4.5. Okay, so now if you remember what Excel will do, it takes the fourth value, 7, and then it takes 50% of the difference between the fourth and the fifth. So that also would be 7.5. What about the 25th percentile? So now we would do 0.25 times 7 plus 1. So now I need my calculator quickly here. So in this case we would do 0.25 times 7 plus 1 equals 2.75. So that means we will go to the second index value, 2, and then we take another 75% of the difference between the fourth and the fifth, the second and the third. So that would be 1. So in this case, so we will have the second index number gives us a 4, and then plus 75% of the difference between the fourth and the fifth. So Excel would return 4.75. So for the 75th percentile, okay, so now we have here 0.75 times 7. So now we get 0.75 times 7 plus 1. So that's 6.25. So we take the sixth, 8, and then we add 25% of the difference between the sixth observation and the seventh. So this difference is 2, and 25% of the 2 are 0.25 times 2, that's 0.5. So Excel would return here 8.5, and therefore in the Excel world, the interquartile range would be the difference between 8.5 and 7, which is 3.75. Okay, so let's actually double check that quickly in Excel. So let me open Excel. And okay, let's see if I can squeeze here the data. So let's copy this. Okay. Okay, so now let's double check what we have. Median equals, the formula is median. So here we should get 7.5. Okay, so next, 25th percentile. We can use either the formula Q1 or percentile inc. Let's do percentile. I forgot the equal sign. Equals percentile inc inclusive. So now 0.25. Well, I think I made a mistake here. Comma 0.25. Okay, let's do it again. Equals percentile inc array, comma 0.25. Okay, so now we get 4.75. So this is the 25th percentile. 75th percentile, now I use the formula for the quartile. 75th percentile equals quartile Okay, so now the 75th percentile is the third, and that should be 8.5. So now the interquartile range is equal to, and you see if you search for IQR, there is nothing in Excel, at least not to my knowledge, that would immediately return the interquartile range. Maybe there is, but I don't see it. But in this case, it's relatively easy. We just subtract from the 75th percentile the 25th percentile. We get 3.75. So again, it's just a review again of some of the formula. Please remember, Excel uses this formula, but in the textbooks, you sometimes find this simplification. But yeah, keeping them separate is not that difficult. Okay, so let's just conclude here, and in the next video, let's just talk again about when to use the range, the variance, the standard deviation, and the interquartile range.